Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining the webinar. All attendees right now are in listen-only mode, and this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to attendees by the end of day tomorrow. My name is Julia Pascarella. I am your host today, and I'm also the Content Marketing Manager at AYRO. AYRO designs and produces zero-emissions vehicles and systems that redefine the very nature of sustainability. Today, during our webinar, we'll be covering the question, what is an LSEV? With Terry Call and Scott Mellon. The presentation on LSEVs will last 15 minutes and will be followed by a 15-minute question and answer session. If you do have questions, please enter them in the Q&A chat that you should see at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. By the end of this webinar, we hope you'll have a better understanding of what an LSEV is, their benefits, and where it makes the most sense to use them. And with that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Terry Call, who is our Vice President of Dealer and Distributor Sales and Channel Development, and Scott Mellon, who is the Vice President of Business Development. Take it away, Scott.
All right, thank you, Julia. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm Scott Mellon, as Julia mentioned, and I'm going to touch on a few topics before I hand off to TK. First is very high level, and that is, what is an LSV? What's a low-speed vehicle? And some of these things you may be familiar with, but I really want to touch on a couple of the key characteristics for what qualifies a vehicle as a low-speed vehicle, and then also what qualifies a vehicle as a low-speed electric vehicle. So first and foremost, it's a four-wheeled motor vehicle. Gross weight has to be less than 3,000 pounds. So if you're going to be driving this vehicle on roads with speed limits, kind of open roads, the vehicle has to be less than 3,000 pounds. And the vehicle's top speed to be a low-speed vehicle has to be at 25 miles per hour or below. So you can take this vehicle, a low-speed vehicle, you can take it on open roads. The vehicle has to be plated and licensed. You have to have a VIN number like any other roadworthy vehicle. And again, it's 35 miles an hour or below, and it has to be set at 25 miles an hour. Like most vehicles, you have to equip the vehicle with seat belts, headlights, taillights, brakes, just the things that you're commonly familiar with on most vehicles. The one caveat that I want to add to this is for a low-speed vehicle that has to be 3,000 pounds or below. Now, if you're going to be a non-LSV, that vehicle is not driven on open roads. Your total capacity, your total weight capacity can go above 3,000 pounds. So you can be at 3,400 pounds, 3,500 pounds. So you don't have to stick to that 3,000 pound maximum if it's going to be a non-LSV. But again, those vehicles can't be driven on open roads. So typically you'll find those on college and university campuses, business campuses, stadiums, arenas, just enclosed environments. And then before we jump forward, the last thing that I want to touch on is the only difference between a low-speed vehicle and a low-speed electric vehicle is simply that that vehicle is powered by an electric motor. And typically that's done for zero emissions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Okay, so where are these vehicles being used? Very commonly, you'll see these vehicles in higher education, college, university campuses. Many campuses across the country have initiatives that they're moving away from internal combustion engine vehicles, and they're moving to all electric vehicles. And so you'll find with different departments, grounds care, maintenance, you'll also find with fleet managers, they're actively looking for low-speed electric vehicles to use on their enclosed college campus. We also see the use of these in other environments, hotels and resorts, for your operations, for grounds care, for moving packages, for mail delivery. and on larger corporate campuses where we've even seen vehicles in the low-speed electric vehicle space used for moving last mile delivery, package delivery, and also in mobile food use around some of these large enclosed campuses. The last area that I'll touch on before I hand off to TK is we also see low-speed vehicles and the demand and growth of the low-speed vehicle being used in urban or highly congested areas. And so a lot of stop and go traffic where, again, you've got 35-mile-an-hour roads or below. And you'll see these vehicles being used for food delivery, for grocery delivery, for package delivery, mail delivery, et cetera. So the application for your low-speed electric vehicles are very broad, and they continue to grow as a lot of operators, fleet managers are moving away from your internal combustion engine into low-speed electric vehicles. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Terry Kale. His friends call him TK. So TK, you're up.
Hey guys, TK here, and to echo what Julia and Scott said already, thank you all for joining us today. Scott just shared with you what an LSEV is, along with its multiple uses in business applications. I'd like to discuss now the benefits of using an LSEV and also the benefits of using an AYRO Vantage low-speed electric vehicle. So first off, let's talk about the benefits of using LSEVs. Number one, right out of the gate, zero emissions. So in addition to our overall well-being, LSEVs really achieve sustainability initiatives that a lot of businesses and organizations are integrating into their day-to-day operations. A really good example of this is up in the Ontario province in Canada. The city of Toronto will convert and migrate all their city vehicles to electric by 2025. They're less expensive to operate in terms of fuel and maintenance, so it reduces the overall cost of ownership from fuel or diesel engines. They're quiet, so since they have an electric motor and not an internal combustion engine, there's minimal or no noise. They're compact in size, so they're very easy to navigate and park. They provide great access onto sidewalks, into areas of heavy traffic urban areas, and also you can go indoors with them. There's improved driver visibility with the LSEVs. So not only is it safer for pedestrians, but also drivers of other vehicles. Users of LSEVs are now experiencing greater payload capabilities, along with increases to range from a single charge. And this is due to technology improvements as time goes on. They're ideal in the most common applications. Scott just shared with you the wide variety of use applications for an LSEV. Low-speed electric vehicles are really well suited for stop-and-go traffic versus highway driving, which makes them ideal for enclosed campuses, congested urban centers, areas with limited or no parking, so on and so forth. Now I'd like to switch over to the benefits of using the AYRO Vantage low-speed electric utility vehicle. First of all, the rear bed capacity on the Vantage is very similar to that of a pickup truck. So at just under 5 feet in width and a little over 13 feet in length, in order to create a good visual for you, the bed size dimensions on the Vantage accommodate a standard sheet of plywood or drywall. The Vantage is compact, so it navigates very well through narrow pathways as well as double doors in order to go inside. It's very nimble with a tight turning radius of 22 feet, which makes it great in tight spaces. And the over-the-cab design and power steering of the Vantage provides optimal navigation and visibility for the vehicle. The Vantage has very highly adaptable bed configurations, so very similar to loading and unloading cargo planes. Using our roll-on, roll-off capability, or as we like to call it, the RoRo, the Vantage can easily convert from a flat bed to a pickup bed to a powered box bed or a enclosed box bed. So you basically have one truck that can cover multiple applications for daily use. It's lightweight. So even with the lightweight design that Scott referred to of 3,000 pounds all in, the Vantage provides an average, on average, a very robust 1,200 pounds of payload capacity and 1,150 pounds of towing capacity. We talked earlier that LSEVs emit zero emissions. So the Vanish obviously can not only be used outdoors, but also indoors. This allows the user to take their materials, their tools, whatever they're having to do directly to the source or need inside versus having to park outside. So it makes good utilization of their time and efforts. The Vanish is equipped with automotive quality parts, and this is very critical that it differentiates us from any other vehicle in this space. Unlike your traditional golf car or utility vehicles, all parts that are used in the Vanish are identical to those in the cars and trucks that you drive. So this makes the Vanish less susceptible to corrosive environmental factors like rain, sleet, snow, ice, salt, and so on and so forth. All of the parts are primarily sourced in North America as well as the European Union, which not only enhances the quality and the reliability of the AYRO Vanish, but also solves for supply chain issues that we're experiencing in today's market. The AYRO Vanish is built right here in Round Rock, Texas. So built in the good old USA. Round Rock, for those of you that don't know, is a northern suburb of Austin, right here in Central Texas. The last piece I'll touch on, the AYRO Vanish comes with an integrated telematics software that's standard on the vehicle. So this technology platform is built with multiple capabilities, including tracking, usage, monitoring the health of the vehicle, so on and so forth. So at this juncture, I'd like to turn it back over to Julia, and she'll take us to our Q&A. Julia?
Thank you, TK. And thank you for that electrifying presentation. Let's move on to question and answers. We have one question that came in that asked, how do you charge the AYRO Vanish, or how do you charge LSEVs? Specifically the AYRO Vanish.
Yeah, so on the Vanish, there's a couple different options that you have for charging capability. Option one is a 110 charge. So if you think about the same plugin that you're using for your iPad, your iPhone, you can plug the AYRO Vanish into a standard 110 outlet, and typically your charging time on that, you know, if it's needing a full charge, might range from 5.5 to 7.5 hours, depending on how low the battery is. But there's also a level 2 charge, so a fast charge. So if someone has the power infrastructure and capability that is on their corporate campus, business campus, university campus, et cetera, you can also use the level 2 charge, and typically your charge time on that is much faster. So that could be 1.5 to 2.5 hours, depending on state of charge.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, are LSEVs and non-LSEVs two different vehicles, and do they vary in price?
Sure. So if you look at your non-LSV and your LSV, in terms of the vehicle, the payload configuration, really those things are identical. So the one thing that you need to be aware of, if you're looking at a low-speed vehicle that's going to be driven on open roads, that the vehicle just needs to be plated and licensed. But in terms of your design, your build of the vehicle, your cab, all of those things are identical between an LSV and a non-LSV. So a big part of the conversation that we have with the end user is just how is it going to be used and where is it going to be used? And that'll help inform us, do we need a non-LSV or do we need an LSV?
Awesome, thank you. And then another question is, will it qualify for the $7,500 EV credit? And the second question is, what's the mileage, or so the mileage amount that the battery will allow? So what's the range?
Sure.
I'll take the range question, team. On the standard offering, on the standard model, we're expecting a range of 50 miles plus. That'll be contingent on a few factors: the payload that is carrying the occupants, the topography that's traveling over. But on the initial vehicle, on the initial model, we're looking at a 50 mile plus range on a single charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the EV credit, so there's federal credits, there's state credits, there's even credits or incentives from a local municipality. And so that'll vary depending on what market that you're in. In terms of the $7,500 federal EV credit, currently low-speed vehicles don't qualify for that. Now that is something that absolutely is in process, and that's in process for the entire low-speed vehicle space, not just with AYRO. Because ultimately, that incentive or that credit is in place to remove an internal combustion engine and replace that vehicle with a electric vehicle. And that's exactly what we're doing in the low-speed electric vehicle space, is typically replacing an internal combustion engine vehicle like a light-duty truck. So in terms of looking at specific incentives, that'll vary from a federal, state, local, and we can absolutely dig into those specific details. And typically we'll start with where you're located and how you're going to be using the vehicle, and then we can explore the tax credits or incentives that are being offered for moving to an electric vehicle.
I hope that answers your question. That was a great answer. The next question we have is, can you speak to the ongoing operational costs of LSEVs versus traditional LSVs?
Yeah, so your big expense for electric vehicles is typically the battery. And so I'll kind of take that question one step further. So if you look at your internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle to a low-speed electric vehicle, typically your low-speed electric vehicle, your cost of operations or your total cost of ownership on that vehicle is much lower. So in comparison, when you look at most low-speed electric vehicles, typically they'll have anywhere from 400 to 600 unique parts that are going into building that vehicle. If you compare that to like a light electric internal combustion engine truck, oftentimes you'll have 25 to 30,000 parts that are going into that vehicle. So apart from just the fuel savings of using an low-speed electric vehicle, there's also actually the maintenance and the repair costs are much lower on that vehicle. So your low-speed electric is typically your lowest cost of ownership beyond any other type of vehicle that's out there.
And Julian and Scott, I'd like to add in too that, outside of, plugging in and charging it, you're not going to have a great deal to do on it. You don't have to refuel it. You don't have to have oil changes. You don't have to change oil filters. You don't have to change air filters, those kind of things. So as you're looking at it, at the cost of it, you want to look at the overall cost of ownership for the length of term that you plan on having the vehicle.
Good point. Good point. I guess moving on to the next question, how do you prevent things loaded from falling out of the vehicle with the flatbed configuration?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, good. Go ahead, Scott. I'll jump in.
Yeah, so the flatbed has, so if you look at the different configurations on the vehicle, you've got a flatbed, a truck bed, and an enclosed box. And so if you're using the flatbed configuration, there are built-in rail system and tie downs. And so from preventing anything that's being loaded from falling out, we'd just be using the existing built-in tie downs that are on the flatbed to tie down your payload. So there's great ways to secure, obviously on the enclosed box and the truck bed, but even on the flatbed, they've got the tie downs, and so you can secure your payload that way.
And I'd like to show one of the features on the AYRO Vanish on the pickup too is both the side rails and the rear tail also fold down for easy loading and unloading, very similar to a flatbed, but the railings can be put back up to put it back into the pickup configuration, and that'll secure what you have on that payload as well.
And we have one more question. And that question is, can a non-LSEV be turned into an LSEV?
So if you look at again, so the non-LSV and the LSV. So your LSV can be used on open roads that are 35 miles an hour or below. but they do require a VIN number and they have to be plated and licensed.
Right.
And so the short answer to that is yes, you can convert a non-LSV into an LSV and use it on open roads. The longer answer to that is that's typically a conversation kind of back to where we normally start, which is where are you going to use the vehicle? How are you going to use the vehicle? And so if there's any scenario where you might be using the vehicle or driving the vehicle on open roads, our recommendation is that you use the low-speed vehicle configuration versus the non-LSV. But again, on a case-by-case basis, we'll walk through how's the vehicle going to be used, where is it going to be used, and then we'll have recommendations on which payload and non-LSV versus LSV.
And I'll just add that if there's never any opportunity or chance for it to access public roads up to 35 miles an hour, then by all means, the customer would be well served to put it in the non-LSV capability or model. And again, then they don't have to go through the exercise of getting it titled and licensed.
Yeah.
Right.
We actually did just have one more question come in, and I think we do have time to answer it. And that question was, will the maintenance be provided by the dealer if something breaks?
Yes, we have and we are establishing a distribution and dealer channel through our partners, not only here domestically but also into Canada in our initial phase. So the dealers that we have on board, our channel partners, will have qualified service technicians that will be able to provide service on the vehicle, and they will be fully authorized to perform any services on the AYRO Vanish, as well as our family of forthcoming electric vehicles.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions. And I think we are out of questions and out of time, so that brings this webinar to a close. Thank you all again for joining us to learn more about what LSEVs are and their ideal applications. We will again, we'll send out the webinar, a recording of it by the end of the day tomorrow. And we will also be having another webinar next month. This is just the first webinar of our series of educational webinars, so we hope to see you at the next one as well. If you are interested in learning more about AYRO's utility LSEV, you can check out our website by scanning the QR code on this screen. You can also reach out to us directly using sales@ayro.com via email. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to shoot us an email. And with that, I hope you guys have a good day. And again, thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you
Julie.
all.